Welcome to this explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled you're joining us today. We're going to dive straight into a truly fascinating story about a historical figure whose immense character literally helped forge a nation. We're talking, of course, about George Washington. But hey, we are just going to rattle off dates and dry facts here. We're really going to pop the hood to understand the mechanics of his character and his leadership, and see exactly how some very specific core traits shaped not just one man, but a whole entire era.
But before we get into all the history, we really have to ask ourselves, what makes a leader truly great? I mean, it's a question we're still grappling with today, right? Is it all about brilliant strategy? Is it about holding absolute power? Keep that specific question in the back of your mind as we go through this. Because as we'll see, true greatness doesn't necessarily come from just clutching onto power, but rather from the moral fiber of the person holding it. And George Washington's life? Well, it's pretty much the ultimate case study to answer that very question.
So let's start at the beginning. Chapter 1, Early Life and Character.
To give us a good mental framework of this 18th century world, we can bracket Washington's extraordinary life into a few massive milestones. It all kicked off on February 22nd, 1732, down in Virginia. Fast forward a bit to 1789, a huge year where he's elected as the very first president, and finally, his passing in 1799. So we're looking at a life that was entirely dedicated to the birth and really the stabilization of a brand new nation. But to understand the president, we actually have to understand the kid first.
Right from his childhood, Washington showed three distinct moral traits. He was honest, hardworking, and extremely responsible. These were the fundamental building blocks of who he was. His greatness wasn't just some sudden magic trick later in life. It was deeply rooted in these everyday, foundational habits that he practiced day in and day out since he was young.
Moving right along to Chapter 2, Leadership in the War of Independence. Now, when America was actively fighting for its freedom, Washington was leading an army that was up against some massive logistical and physical nightmares. They had to endure incredibly harsh winters, operating with virtually no resources and navigating just tremendously brutal conditions. It was undeniably bleak. And yet, despite all of that stacked against him, Washington responded with unwavering bravery and absolutely incredible leadership. He somehow managed to keep his soldiers' morale up when everything around them was literally freezing and falling apart. Those childhood traits of responsibility and hard work, they were now holding an entire army together.
And because of that sheer perseverance, America achieves its independence. It was specifically because of Washington's bravery and his steady hand in those absolute darkest moments that America actually won its freedom. Those traits we talked about earlier didn't just help him survive a war, they literally secured the independence of the nation. It is a powerful testament to just how vital, strong moral leadership is when you're in the middle of a massive crisis.
Which brings us to Chapter 3, First President and Great Example.
So, in 1789, fresh off the victory of independence, he gets elected as America's very first president. And his core priorities for the presidency were crystal clear: justice, honesty, and public service. It's actually amazing how seamlessly his childhood values, especially that deep-seated honesty, translated directly into his political leadership. He didn't use this immense new power to just line his own pockets. Instead, he made justice and serving the public his absolute top priorities, basically setting the moral compass for the highest office in the land. Now, George Washington served exactly 2 terms as president. And, that might just seem like a simple trivia fact to us today, but what he did at the very end of that second term is what truly cemented his historical greatness. He voluntarily stepped down from power. No way around it. That was a massive deal. At that time in history, leaders simply did not give up power willingly. Kings, emperors, military conquerors, they ruled until they died or somebody overthrew them. In fact, when King George III of England heard Washington might actually step down, he reportedly said if he does that, he will be the greatest man in the world. By just walking away, Washington set a beautiful global precedent for the peaceful transfer of power. He proved that the office itself is way more important than the individual holding it. It is just a brilliant illustration of his profound sense of public service.
And that leads us to Chapter 4, Final Days and Important Lesson.
So after walking away from the single most powerful position in the country, where does the guy go? Well, he retreated to a quiet life. He spent his final years peacefully back at his farm, Mount Vernon, and it was there, after a literal lifetime of relentless service to his nation, that he passed away on December 14th, 1799. A very quiet end for a man who made such a phenomenally loud impact on world history.
Looking back, George Washington's life really teaches us that honesty, courage, hard work, and good leadership are exactly what elevate a human being to true greatness. Notice how completely consistent this is throughout his whole story. From that young boy in Virginia to the general freezing in the winter, all the way to the first president of a brand new nation, those core traits never wavered once. They were, without a doubt, the undeniable formula for his extraordinary life. And this brings us to the ultimate takeaway of Washington's legacy, encapsulated by the idea that serving one's country and people always brings honor and success. True honor doesn't come from blind ambition or stubbornly clinging to power. It comes from dedicating your life, your hard work, and your courage to the service of others. That, right there, is the true measure of success. Which leaves us with one final, very important question. How will you apply honesty, courage, and service in your own life? We've just explored how these universal traits literally built a nation and defined a historical icon. But hey, they aren't just meant to be stuck in dusty history books. They are choices that we can make every single day. So I challenge you to reflect on your own capacity for these traits. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in this explainer today. It's been an absolute blast diving into this history with you. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and I'll catch you later.